Here's how to transfer a photo using shipping tape. Specifically a glossy photo, because there's a bunch of different ways to do image transfers, but this video is all about shipping tape and glossy photos. Hi, I'm Phia. I'm a photographer, and I started playing with tape transfers because I wanted to craft with my photos. I've done these a bunch of times, so I'm an expert. Okay, well, I'm not an expert, but I've learned a thing or two, so I'm happy to share what I've learned. It's a quick and easy craft that you can do at home, and you likely probably already have all the tools you need. So let's jump in and start talking about the materials. You'll need shipping tape, just like your basic tape for shipping boxes, scissors, a knife, or both, and a ruler to keep things straight. A tray and warm water. Make sure that the water is warm. Now let's talk about the most important part, the glossy photo. I always print mine out on glossy photo paper, which you can tell by the shine, and usually a couple copies because it's easy to make mistakes. You can try with an old photo, but that makes me nervous. I wouldn't want to accidentally ruin an old photo, but do whatever you want. It's up to you. So the paper you work with will affect the entire project. It will essentially be how easy or difficult it is to peel the image from the tape. I have worked with a bunch of different papers, and what I've found is it's easiest to work with a lightweight paper. Yes, papers have weight. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to talk about it, but they have different weights. My go-to paper is the Epson Photo Paper Glossy, and it's 52 pounds. If you choose to work with a higher end, maybe a heavier paper, you might have a harder time peeling it in the end. I just have better luck with papers that are 53 pounds and below. However, that's not always true. This was an HP Everyday Photo Paper at 53 pounds, and it was the worst. No shade at HP though, I'm sure it makes a great photo printing paper, which is what it's meant for, but it was really hard to peel. The first time I used this paper, it drove me insane. I got so frustrated, I deleted all of that footage, but I brought the paper back out to film again and show you how hard it is to use. The backing of it is just so stuck to it. No big pieces come off, and you have to constantly pick away slowly at each piece, and that creates scratches on the photo, and it just ruins it. I think the big takeaway here is the back of the photo paper is really important, and often an easier one to work with ends up being a lighter weight paper, but that's obviously not always the case, and it's got to be a little bit of trial and error to figure out which one works best for you. But don't worry, I want to show you one more. It's not always bad. Check out this paper I found at my mom's house. It's a glossy photo paper, but the back is incredibly lightweight, and it felt like a basic printer paper. So a glossy front with a paper back, and when I put it into water, it was so easy to peel. It was amazing. It practically fell off. Unfortunately, it was just loose at my mom's house. She could have had it for a decade or so. I don't know where it came from, what the brand is, and I can't really walk into a store and feel backs of papers. So if you're watching this and you have any idea of a brand of glossy photo paper where the back just feels like printer paper, feel free to let me know because I would love to work with that paper again. All right, I've been talking about paper for a while. Let me know if you have any questions. I think I covered it all, but it's time to move on. I use a bone folder, and you can use one too, but you don't have to. You just need something with a straight, flat edge to push the air bubbles out from underneath the tape without ripping it. In the past, I've used other things like this clip, an old credit card, a popsicle stick, maybe a plastic knife. Use whatever you got. Get creative with it. Let's talk about the glue. I use Mod Podge and a brush, but you can use any type of clear drying adhesive. I would just test it out first. What's cool about doing a tape transfer with other types of paper, like here I'm using a magazine, is that once you're done with the transfer, the tape becomes sticky again and you can immediately just place it wherever. Unfortunately, with photo papers, I've never had that luck, and you're gonna have to use glue to attach it to the paper or just whatever surface you're working off of. So Mod Podge on the transfer, and these glues I use for crafting. Lastly, you have the crafting materials. This can be whatever you have, whatever you want, however you want to decorate your transfer once it's done. All right, now I'm going to walk you through my process. There are two ways to do it. I'm going to show you the way I usually do it, but also the alternative way. To start, grab your print, and then you're going to take a piece of tape a little bit longer than the image. Hover that piece of tape over your photo, be careful not to bump it, it's easy to do, and kind of eye out where you're going to be placing it. You want the tape to be fully covering one edge and the top and the bottom of the photo. Once you're ready to place it down, take your top hand and stick it to the surface, and then slowly pull it down the tape until it's fully attached. Be sure to keep your other hand in the air until your top hand slides all the way down to meet it. Grab your bone folder and start to press out all the air bubbles from under the tape. You're gonna do this again later, but I find it helpful if you do some air bubbles piece by piece. Grab your next piece of tape and repeat the process. Except this time, when you place your tape, you want it to slightly overlap with the last piece of tape. This is essentially what holds the piece together. You don't want it too big, too small. I would aim for about 1/4 inch. Slowly attach the tape just like before, and then remove all air bubbles. But let's talk about air bubbles for a second. Anywhere you leave an air bubble will be a blank space because the ink can't connect to the tape. So you're gonna wanna try to get them all out, but it's not possible. And that's okay, it's kind of part of the aesthetic. But if you don't like them, I would just make sure to gently remove all the air bubbles without ripping your piece. Continue that process of overlapping the tape until your entire piece is covered. For me, it took 3 pieces of tape. Depending on the size of your image and the size of your tape, it might take more or less. Once it's fully covered, go over it one more time, removing all the air bubbles. Really pay attention to those areas where the tape overlaps because bubbles tend to get trapped there. But don't worry about it too much, it doesn't need to be perfect. Now grab your knife and ruler and cut your piece off the surface. Now that I'm holding it, I'm going to give you a better look at those overlaps so you can kind of see how big I made them. Before we move on, I want to quickly show you another way to do it. I hate doing it this way. You might like doing it this way. It's good if you only have scissors or you just don't want to peel the tape off the table, but it's essentially the same exact thing, but upside down. So take your pieces of tape and layer them sticky side up. Once your tape pieces are wider than the photo, grab your image and place it face down onto the tape. Pick it up, trim the edges, and then remove all those air bubbles. And I always get so many air bubbles when I do it this way. That's why I don't usually do it this way. But I don't know, you might like it. All right, I'm going back to my original piece. Once yours is fully covered in tape and cut out, it's time to place it in water. Make sure that you're using warm water because if the water is too hot or too cold, it's gonna be a hard time peeling the tape, and that's no fun. So I like to flip it over and push it down flat in the water. I don't know if that's necessary, it's just what I do. And then I let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Once I return to it, I make sure that the water is still warm and then I begin peeling. This process will always vary, and like we talked about a bunch before, the paper is a big factor in that, but the goal is always the same. We're trying to get down to the translucent layer of ink and tape. It's helpful to have a little bit of nail biters, to peel at the corner. That's where I usually start. And you might find yourself pulling off multiple layers like I'm doing right now. If this is the case, make sure that the back of the piece is always wet, and it's okay to let it sit and soak in the water for a little bit longer. Warm water, that is. But you know that. This process can take some time, but I've sped things up, and here I've gone through to the tape layer. It's easiest to work at corners, so if one doesn't work, just move on to the next. When you're peeling, some ink can come up like that. I think a little bit of it is okay, but if it's happening to a huge chunk of it, I would just stop and let it soak in water for a little bit longer and then move to a different corner. Sometimes you'll get these little pieces stuck at the end and you just gotta work at them. But that's it. Now we have our tape transfer, and like I said before, if it was a magazine or a different type of paper, it would still be sticky tape, but it's not, so we can't directly place it on anything. We're gonna have to use glue. You can really do whatever you like for the crafting portion. I typically put mine on paper. I avoid using only white paper because it looks too similar to the original photo. But I do like using some white because I feel like the image gets a little distorted on the tape, so placing it against white or lighter colors helps show the details. Applying the glue can be kind of frustrating because the transfers like to roll up. If you can flatten it out before, that's great. I try my best to apply the glue evenly to the back of the transfer. If you go too thick, it might make it a little bit foggy, but it also is kind of a cool look, so you're gonna have to play around with it. I wipe off the excess glue, let it dry, and then it's done. You got your tape transfer. Congrats. Thank you for watching. That should be everything I know about tape transfers. If you have any questions, please comment. And if I forgot anything, I'll make another video because I have done this so many times, I know way too much about tape transfers. And of course, if you enjoy this video and want to see more crafting videos, feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.